5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome. Good night, everyone. I hope you're all doing great. Very first show of the Tell Me That Story. And my name is Max. I will be your host for this show. And we'll get right into it. I'm going to bring Isa and Ocean into the stage. And first of all, we're going to do some light housekeeping. Hope you are both doing great. And we have to really put our hands out to Ziggy Sigwald, who became a member of the Matters Now channel and also gifted 50 memberships to the audience. So, virtual round of applause for him. Thank you very much for your generosity. It's greatly appreciated. And before we get started, I'm going to give you guys a little rundown of what the show is going to be like. Basically, we're going to tell you stories that we find kind of funny or weird. We are going to basically go through chronicles and the ancient myths. It's going to be a very wide a range of topics, but it will mostly be kind of based on mythology, things of the past, maybe a little history here and there. But the point of the show is kind of to make it a funny thing. I'm trying to look for stories that have funny twists or have a little bit of humor to them. So today we are going to talk about the curse of House Atreus. It's a Greek myth, and it's very interesting story. Before we get started, Ocean, Isa, say hi, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Ozian. I'm the host of Matters Now. We started this channel like 3 months ago, and a little over 3 months ago, and it's grown significantly. I thank everybody for all their participation, joining the streams. Siggy Sigwald for sending us 666 Argentina's pesos. He promised and delivered. Hail Sagan. Thank you very much, Siggy. I know you from Twitter a little bit, like I've commented. We chat a little bit on Twitter, so I recognize the name. Thank you so much for all that generosity and all the 50 new channel members to the channel. That's awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, Isa, anything?
So, I guess I'll step up. My name's Isa. I am a classical guy on Matters Now and modern day debates. I've done a lot of debates. I'm a moderator on the Discord. I have a YouTube channel too, mostly streaming Matters Now stuff, and I have a few animations and stuff. But I definitely think I love being a part of this community and being a correspondent.
We really love you too, and your points of view are so greatly appreciated. It's amazing to have you here. So we'll get started right away. I'm going to share my screen. Go ahead.
Siggy just gave us 50 more channel memberships.
Oh my! Woo-hoo-hoo! Thank you so much, Siggy.
Dude,
and we are awesome. Aware of the effort that is paying something like this from Argentina. I myself am from Uruguay, so we know how this impacts you. So extremely grateful for your generosity. You're a very cool person in our eyes. So on top of the story today, I'm going to be sharing some slides. I went through a bunch of material to try and find depictions of some of the people, and we're going to basically be making a little bit of a genealogy tree. So because the story has many, many characters, so to keep everything in order and keep the audience engaged, I brought up some examples of the people that we're talking about. So today we're talking about an awful family. It's a story filled with murder, vengeance, disgrace, treason, and death. a family we can call of the house of Atreus, but if we will go a little further back, we can call it the house of Tantalus. So this story begins with Tantalus, who was a son of Zeus, and he was friend with the gods. One day, he invited the gods for dinner, and inviting the gods for dinner, it's kind of fantastic, right? So for that meal, he didn't know what to do, so he cooked his own son, Pelops, in a stew and served the dish to the gods. All of the gods realized this, but Demeter didn't. She was a little bit upset because her daughter Persephone was in the underworld with Hades. And that's one of the stories we're going to tell in the future. It's a very interesting story also. So Demeter didn't realize this, and she ate a little bit of the stew and of Pelops. The gods were horrified by what happened and returned Pelops to life, who went on to marry a woman called Hippodamia and had sons. But the family was very well on their way to be cursed. The gods had already set their sights on Tantalus, and in fact, Tantalus is still there today in Hades, enduring his terrible punishment. And for those of you who don't know, his punishment is the following: he's in a little lagoon lake, and he's thirsty, but every time he tries to reach down to take a sip of water, the water level lowers. And he's also very hungry. And as you can see in the picture right now, there's branches with fruit, but every time he tries to reach for one of those, they move away from him. So that's Tantalus's punishment in hell. Now, Tantalus was Pelops' father, and with Hippodamia, they also had. I'm sorry. Tantalus was Pelops' father, and Pelops and Hippodamia had two children, which were the focal point of the story, and they are Atreus and Thyestes. These two kids hated each other with a passion. They hated each other for many, many reasons. And in the most classical sense, we can say that they were not really good people. They had already murdered a sort of stepbrother they had, which was called Chrysippus. And because of this murder, as it was custom in Greece, they moved away to another city-state. They went to the city of Mycenae, or I'm sorry if I butcher all of these pronunciations. I don't speak Greek, so bear with me, please. So they went to Mycenae, and there famously lived King Eurystheus, which was the king that imposed the 12 labors on Hercules. Some of you, if you know a little bit about Greek myth, must know about King Eurystheus. So an oracle, died. An oracle said that it would be best to name king one of Pelops' sons. And coincidentally, both Atreus and Thyestes lived there, and where this kind of kindled the fire of their hatred. They started hating each other more because each of them wanted to be king. So now Atreus had got from Artemis Atreus had got from Artemis a golden fleece, which, if you know the story of Jason and the Argonauts, a golden fleece is basically the skin of a golden ram which had wings. And of course, being golden, it meant it was also magical. So now we have Atreus on one side with his magic golden fleece, and he had a wife. Her name was Erope, who coincidentally was his brother's lover. So one day, Erope steals the fleece from Atreus and gives it to Thyestes, and says something to the effect of, now you're going to see what I'll do for you, Thyestes, to be king. She goes back to Atreus and tells him, why don't you propose that it becomes king he who has a golden fleece. Atreus thought, that's a good idea. And he wasn't the smartest cookie. And he said, that's cool. So the gods kind of intervened with him. He heard a knock on the door. Who is it? The gods. We're coming here to tell you a few things. The first one is that you don't have the golden fleece. Your brother has it. And they also told him about his wife being his brother's lover. So now when you say, tomorrow, choose for king he who has the golden fleece, your brother is going to come out with the fleece and he will become king. So it's best that you come up with an alternative for this method of choosing a king. For example, you could say, may he become king who can make the sun set in the east. And we, being the gods, will give you a hand with that and will make the sun set in the east for you. How could anyone after that deny a vote for king on someone who can invert the solar path? So Helios took care of it, made the sun rise on the west, set on the east, and Atreus became king to Tiestes' surprise. But now, as we said before, they weren't good people. We have Atreus becoming king with the knowledge of his brother's betrayal, and he decided to take revenge, as most of these myths have sometimes a revenge quest, right? So first he banished Tiestes. But then, like those people who think that their cruelty is not enough, he called them again. He made him come back to Mycenae. So he invited him to dinner and served him three of his sons, the one called Aglaeus, the one called Calais, and the one called Orchomenus. And Tiestes ate them, all three of them. Tiestes had more children as well. He had a daughter called Pelopia, and he didn't have a better idea than to commit incest with his own daughter. Out of this union came a child called Aegisthus. Now, this child was abandoned due to the shame of his origin. After all, he was the son of his own grandfather, which is extremely weird. And he didn't know who his father was. So Atreus raised him, and when Aegisthus came to being an adult, Atreus, which still thought that everything he had done to his brother wasn't enough, he said, "Oh well, I'm going to kill him. It's like I'm done trying to figure out how to mess with this guy. I'm just going to kill him." And what did he do? He sent Aegisthus and set him on the murder path against Tiestes, right? But on the way, he found out that he was Tiestes' son, and also his granddad was Tiestes as well, and Atreus his uncle. So instead of killing Tiestes, he goes back and killed Atreus. Now, Atreus had many children, and this is where the story kind of really begins. This was a preamble setting up kind of how the curse got started. But now we get into the nit and grit of the story, and hold your horses because it gets wild. So, Atreus had many children, two of which are really important to the story, which are Agamemnon, the general of the troops in the war against Troy, and Menelaus, the husband of Helen of Troy, the guy who was the cause of the war because his wife abandoned him for Paris. Now, Agamemnon, as we said, was the general of the Greek army, and he had his things. He was a bit murdery, for lack of a better word. He fell in love with a woman called Clytemnestra, and she was already married. She was married to a guy named, guess what? Tantalus, because, even in Greek times, people had the same names. So what did Agamemnon do? Agamemnon killed Tantalus, and he killed all the children he had with Clytemnestra. Clytemnestra had two brothers, the famous Dioscuri, Castor and Pollux, who opposed this marriage because they didn't think it was right having a pretendant for their sister who began by killing their brother-in-law and their nieces and nephews. But she didn't listen to them. She married him. So now we have Agamemnon married to Clytemnestra, and catching up with the family tree. Agamemnon married to Clytemnestra, and they have three kids: Electra, Iphigenia, and Orestes. Agamemnon. Sorry, I got lost in my notes here. So, as we mentioned, Agamemnon was the general, and when they set out to go siege Troy, while they were waiting, they had some fun hunting. And Agamemnon hunted deer and claimed, "I've hunted this deer as well as Artemis." Artemis didn't take too kindly to this and said, "Well, no one hunts as well as Artemis. This guy is gloating. I'm going to mess with him." So she sent away all the wind so they couldn't set sail to go siege Troy. And they were stuck there on the beach, ready with their boats ready to go to war for days, weeks, months, until a soothsayer, the famous Calchas, came up to them and told Agamemnon, "I've consulted the oracle, and here is what we must do to make up with Artemis. We have to offer a sacrifice, and you must offer your daughter Iphigenia in sacrifice to Artemis, and she will send you good winds." Agamemnon said, "Very well," because he was kind of a miserable person, so he must have thought, what's more worthy, a daughter or some wind? And he thought, yes, some wind. So he said to make the sacrifice. Some versions of the story say that he did commit this sacrifice, but some other versions said, as it happened before in Greek myths, some other versions say that Artemis at the last moment took pity on his daughter, and she accepted a deer as a sacrifice. And then what she did was kidnap Iphigenia and took her to another city, took her to the city of Tauris, where there was a famous Artemis sanctuary, and saved her life. Now the winds came along, the Greek fleet set sail, the Trojan War began, 9 years of war, everything we already know about this. When the war was over, Agamemnon returned home. I mean, where else would he go? But the spoils of war took a woman, which, as far as war booty goes, is not a bad one. This woman was no other than the daughter of King Priam of Troy, and her name was Cassandra. As many of you may know, Cassandra had the gift of prophecy, but also, because of a curse from Apollo, no one ever believed her prophecies, which were exact, but no one ever believed her. Now, we have Agamemnon going back home with Cassandra, and she told him, being as she was capable of prophecy, she told him, "Aga, don't go back home because they're going to kill you." Because, obviously, she called him Aga. We can speculate on that confidently. And of course, Agamemnon didn't believe her, as was part of what made Cassandra be cursed. So he returned home. At this time, Clytemnestra, his wife, had taken a lover. And guess who that lover was? It was Aegisthus, the son of Thyestes, with his own daughter Pelopia. And they were there hanging out, how people get after being lovers for 9 years when the husband is away on war. they get complacent. I'm pretty sure he used all of Agamemnon's underwear. You know how these things go. Now Agamemnon was returning, and they were waiting for him. Um, so when he came back, there are many different versions of how they killed him, but the version that we're referencing today says that they waited him for him with a meal, and they started being nice and everything, and at one point in the meal 20 men come in and killed Agamemnon. So now we have Agamemnon dead. Now Agamemnon had two other children, Electra and Orestes. We mentioned them before. They were under the tutelage of an uncle called Strophius. Years passed and they stayed with their uncle Strophius, but later they separated and each went their own way. Now, they didn't see each other until they became of age, of adult age, until they grew up. There's one detail in this part of the story, which later retellings of this very same story, they dropped this because they thought it was it was a very weird metaphor. So basically, Electra goes to visit Agamemnon's tomb, and right before she was there, Orestes had been there, and he had left a clump of hair, and Electra recognized them for his curl. You know this portion. So later chronicles thought this was a very ineffective thing to add to the story, so they kind of just dropped it. And it makes you think, like, how are you going to recognize someone for a curl? It's a bit weird. Now, they met up when they became adults, and they planned to take revenge. Orestes came disguised to Mycenae and knocked on Clytemnestra's and Aegisthus' door, pretending to be a messenger coming to announce the death of Orestes. So, knock, knock. Yeah, hello. Ah, don't you think I'm Orestes? I'm just a messenger coming to announce that I died. You know? And Clytemnestra, who was really evil, as you might have conjectured, said, yay, he died. Because they were afraid of the vengeance of their son. And she let Aegisthus know that Orestes had died, and Aegisthus asked, who told you? Oh, here, this messenger. And the messenger, hey, yeah, me. Not Orestes. So during this time, Orestes took advantage of his mother being distracted and kills her. So while he was at it, he also killed Aegisthus. And to add insult to injury, a little son of them who was called Aletes, who was just hanging around there, is like, hey, here, you take some too. Electra and Orestes had consulted the Oracle of Delphi before committing this crime. And they got the go-ahead from the Oracle. Yeah, go ahead, commit the crime, and it will all be good. But besides the favorable Oracle, the gods, when they saw this, they were horrified. After all, he had killed his own mother. And now three ladies came along, the Erinyes, or the Furies, a quasi-police institution in Greek myths who had the mission of chasing those who committed crimes, especially those who committed crimes against their own families. So they drove Orestes mad, as it was accustomed. Not that they bothered him in the sense in the colloquial sense. They literally drove him to madness, as they usually did in these cases. Again, as it was customary, since they had committed a murder, they had to move to another city-state, and they went to Tauris, accompanied by another cousin of theirs called Pylades. When they came upon tourists, someone asked them, "Oh, are you travelers?" "Yes, yes, we have just arrived." "Oh, well, we regret to inform you that here we have the custom of killing the travelers that arrived." "Since when?" "Since yesterday." Like, oh, damn. I think we're getting killed. But the person who was talking to them told them, "Why don't you consult the priestess?" And do you remember who the priestess was? It was Iphigenia, who at the beginning refused to help. It's like, I don't want to be bribed. This is my job. You're putting me in a commitment. I don't know. But they convinced her. Yes, they convinced her, and they begged the goddess Athena for forgiveness, and Electra and Orestes were forgiven. So he was no longer mad from what the Erinyes had done to him, and basically, um, they kind of went their own way. Orestes married an old acquaintance, Hermione. He became king later, but in another city-state, Argos. Iphigenia became an immortal and got married. What best thing could happen to anyone than becoming an immortal, right? And on top of becoming immortal, she got married. She got married to Achilles, but in Hades, which Achilles was not only in Hades, but he was already dead. It seems that immortals can come and go from Hades as they please, which this is really weird, right? Electra got married to their little cousin Pylades, and this ends the long chain of disgrace that always lasts 3 generations. Everything ended up well. This is a wonderful story to tell the kids. Now, I have some reflections. I took this story from a book I read in high school, which is the Birth of the Tragedy of Nietzsche. And in that book, Nietzsche says that this is how the Greeks spent their time, seeing all this in the, I think it's the first or the second page, depending on the edition, of The Birth of Tragedy. Um, he says how the ones that invented these tremendous works, which are the tragedies, were the most luminous amongst the ancients, were the most fun, the most beautiful, the most beloved. And the Greeks, they were the ones who invented all this. Not a sad people, not a hopeless, a fearful or melancholic people, but a people who knew how to enjoy the pleasures of the body and of the spirit. These were the ones that invented the tragedy. And Nietzsche says, and I believe him as if people expected my dispensation on Nietzsche, but that at some point the torturous arts, the pessimistic vision of the world don't come from a torturous and pessimistic people. They come from a people with such a strength that are capable of assuming pessimistic convictions or construct art that is at some point a little bit sinister and made of sadness. On the contrary, he says, the optimistic views of the world are like everything will be fixed, let's look at the glass half full. Those come from more fearful people who need a collection of mythical tales and artistry that tells them that everything will be okay and everything will be fixed and that life instead of a tragedy sorry, life instead of a tragedy is a carnival. Huh. What a family this one was. And when I think about this, I think that maybe my family is not that bad. You know, I tend to think that I don't know, maybe because my brother-in-law owes me some money, I get an optimistic thought about this. It's like, yeah, well, maybe it would be way worse that he freaking killed me. So now that we're done with the story, I'm going to ask both of you, who would you like to dedicate this story? And just so you get an idea of what I'm thinking with this question, I would like to dedicate the story to Aletes, which in the middle of all of this mess of revenge killings, infidelity, and stuff, he was the only one that seems to just be going by there and got killed just because he was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And since we have named Nietzsche, I would also like to dedicate this little chat on the show today to Nietzsche. So, Ocean, Isa, who would you like to dedicate this to?
I haven't thought about that. Like dedicate the stream to or the story in general.
Sorry, it could be anyone who.
And you mean like Nietzsche, like the philosopher Nietzsche, or
yes?
I don't know. William Shakespeare, he wrote stories like that too.
Yeah, that's a very good dedication. And Isa, anything coming to mind?
So I guess, I feel a kind of a resonance for those who are kind of relatively innocent of the chaos in stories, particularly in the Greek narrative. So I think in the story, I'm going to do what you did. I'm going to dedicate it to a character from the story, and I'm going to dedicate it to someone else too. So I'm going to dedicate it to Pelops, who was served by his father to the divinities that came to the house. What did Pelops do to deserve to be, made into a meal to be consumed? And the gods knew that, so they brought him back to life. But I think it's just it's so sad that why does this character have to suffer the way that he did? And it's sad because his own descendants suffer as well. It's just tragedy upon tragedy. So I feel that even though,
yeah, like how is it so much a meme of the time that they actually tell it in these stories?
It's the Greek stories are all tragic, and so I give my first cup to I do a libation first for Pelops, and then my second libation is for another Greek tragic hero named Orpheus, and Orpheus is completely an innocent character that gets kind of trapped in all of this stuff, and he's kind of considered the patron saint in a sense of music, and his music actually had power and magic in a sense. But basically, in a nutshell, his story is he comes from nobility, he meets this woman, they fall in love, they get married. His wife unfortunately gets pursued by this dude. She gets bitten by a snake. She dies, gets brought to Hades. He goes on a journey to go save her. He goes all the way to Hades to save her. And then he's told that she will come back to life if he can go all the way back, all the way back from whence he came, but he can't look back. He can't look back at her. And basically he makes it almost all the way to the very end. But then doubt creeps in, and he looks back, and he loses everything. So he's completely distraught. He wants to get her back, but it's too late now. So then he goes out, out into the world, and he's just like not in a good sense, and he's just depressed and sad. And then he meets these kind of very, I don't know how you would define these type of women, but there were these very over-imposing type of women who want to basically sleep with him, but he's only in love with this other woman. And then basically they go into a rage based on Dionysus, like the god of drinking and and wine, and or Bacchus. And basically they go on a rage and try to kill him, but his music protects him. So what they do is they start screaming, and that overpowers the music, and then they throw spears and he dies. But I guess the end of the story, he gets to be with his beloved. But I pour my second cup to him because, just like Pelops, this is an innocent man who really did nothing wrong, but suffers greatly, just because he's in the wrong story. To be quite honest, In most heroic
I-
stories, he would, get with his loved one and make it out. But in the Greek mythology, no such luck.
Yes, I will. I have a surprise for you. We are going to tell the story of Orpheus completely in. I think it'll be show number 3 or number 4 because it's also one of my favorites, and it has some kind of funny things too about it. So
Do you think that
for
was
the
a good
next,
retelling? Do you think that was a good
yes,
retelling of the
yes,
story?
yes. I have a little bit more details and some extra things. Like before he went, Orpheus was part of the expedition of Jason and the Argonauts, for example. So there's a lot to tell about him. He's a quite an important figure, and his story is absolutely amazing. So yeah, we're going to retell that one. And for the show next week, I already have planned. I have a catalog of weird deaths. Let me ask you, while I was controlling the whole presentation and reading my notes, I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see the stream yard or the YouTube pages. What were there any comments by the audience? Anything interesting happened while I couldn't look?
Not too much. People were just listening. I think Siggy made a point that Greek mythology is full of murder, jealousy, and incest. Still less awful than Abrahamic mythology.
And I love that he sent 666.
I would say it's complex because it depends on what part of Abrahamic mythology. Because see, the thing is, it's thousands of years, so it changes. That's the thing; it changes and becomes a different kind of narrative throughout the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, the archetypes of stories haven't changed in millennia. We just like the hero journey, the revenge, the quest for revenge, and uh, it's a whole thing in the Greek. I think the where the disconnect is between these stories and the ones that are posed in the Bible is that no one pretends that this Greek. I'm sorry, my tongue twisted. These Greek myths were true. I mean, I'm sure the people at the time kind of believed that it was true, but none of us kind of hold any of this to any degree of truth.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the disconnect kind of happens when it comes to sometimes the same story is told a little bit differently in different times. But when you make these claims that, oh yeah, this did happen and this is the word of God, then that kind of, at least for me, it makes it a bit worse.
Yeah.
Worse. I'm sorry.
I do. Somebody, speaking of books, there's a book club doing a book review for my book, Beyond Faith by Ozian Talks. I promised to be there at 9:30, so I'm a little bit late. But I do want to bring up, speaking of books, one of my favorite series of books are the Dune series by Frank Herbert. So if you're familiar with Paul Atreides, House Atreides, the lore of the story of the Dune novels that Frank Herbert used is that House Atreides is the descendants of House Atreus. So House Atreus became whatever. Eventually, House Atreides. So the Agamemnon is like where they trace their lineage to in the books, in the Dune novels. So like the God Emperor of the known galaxy was from House Atreus.
Do you know what's also really funny? I brought this up in my debate. I brought up the Dune series when I talked to Apostate Prophet. And the idea is they also have a fusion of Islam and Buddhism, the Zen Sunnis and the Zen Shias, which is really interesting that that's the futuristic religion that exists within that time.
Well, they have the Orange Catholic Bible, which is sort of like this repurposing of Catholicism to be anti-AI because they had this Butlerian jihad against AI, like they became like sentient and they fought a war with them. If you read like the other books, you see references to those in those books too, but it does mesh all those things together. But with that, it looks like there's more super chat. I'll let you deal with the Max. I got to go to this other thing, but thank you so much for the show.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. And we have another super chat from Ziggy. Another 666 super chat, Argentinian pesos. At least in Greek mythology, rape is bad, not like Abrahamic mythology, where instead it's regulated. I do kind of share that sentiment too. There's one passage, the one about if a man abuses a woman, can buy her off for 50 coins. That one breaks my mind. Another another 666 message from Ziggy. Super chat, I'm sorry. Shout out to my new Uruguayan friend Max and Alejandro Dolina. Yes, a lot is a lot of the idea of this show comes from him. He's someone that absolutely love and have heard, have seen live. So for those of you who don't know, Alejandro Dolina is a communicator from Argentina. He's also a writer, musician, uh, a man of the world, basically. And he has had a radio show for, I don't know, something crazy, like 30 years. And they kind of do something similar. They retell stories, and that's where I kind of got the idea for this show. Anything else any other thoughts that this story stirred up in your mind, Isa?
Well, I think it's interesting because this is what we can see with ancient traditions, that there's a lot of tragedy. And it's interesting that the Abrahamic traditions are brought up because that has a lot of tragedy too. Um, and it's just like I think this is the norm of like pre-common era um, world, is that people really suffered greatly, and you can see it in their writing. You can see their suffering. You can see their pain. It's not just rose colored and happy. It's a lot of suffering and sadness and melancholy, and I think it kind of grounds us in a reality. Our lives aren't just all joy and happiness. There's a lot of suffering and struggle, and I think that that's what you see here. And even when you see kind of like a ray of hope, there's more suffering. So in a sense, it kind of echoes a sort of Buddhist thought that there is suffering or dukkha, and I feel that that's what I see in this story, just endless suffering. And I thought of also the another trilogy, the you might be doing this too, Oedipus Rex and Antigone, where it's just a whole trilogy of suffering and pain and tragedy. It's tragic. So that's what I feel. And tragedy is real.
Yes, it is. Any thoughts on what I mentioned about what Nietzsche said, that happy people produce maybe sad arts, and more sad people who suffer have a little bit more of a cheerful art as a way of compensating? What do you think about that?
I think it's a solid argument. I think that it's just kind of a balance. I was thinking there's this video game series called the Ultima series, and in this series, probably one of the best entries is the Serpent Isle, which is Ultima 7. And basically, there's this concept of balance, that there's these three serpents that are kind of having balance. They need to have this third serpent that brings balance, but one is law, one is order, and one is chaos. And the idea is that order and chaos need a balance. You can't just have order that runs everything, and you can't have chaos that runs everything. Because if you do, you just have a hot mess. And I think that's how it is in our own reality, too. You need to have a balance. So when things are joyful and happy, you need to be sadness that balances it out.
Mm-hmm.
That joy won't be fully understood or savored if you don't have the sadness. And it's the same with, if everybody's sad, they need to have joy. So there's a need of balance in the Force, I guess you could say.
Yeah, when it comes to balance, and I go a little bit further beyond, I think that it is sadness what gives meaning to happiness. So whenever I'm presented with this idea of eternal bliss in heaven, that to me sounds dreadful, like honestly dreadful. I couldn't take being happy all the time. It would blow my mind. So in that sense, when you tell me, I would rather take eternal torture any day over eternal happiness. I don't know exactly why, but yeah, I think it's the contrast in those things, that you cannot have happiness if you don't have at least a little bit of sadness to make the contrast and make that stand out. I'm pretty sure you've heard this many times before. I'm curious
I
on,
agree.
on
I
your
agree.
opinion on this.
Well, you brought up an interesting point about the endless bliss. So I'm a person, you could tell I love media, movies, video games, TV shows. I'm kind of a connoisseur of all these things. So there's a TV show called, it was very old, the series, it has many iterations, and there's one even pretty recent called The Twilight Zone.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an episode of The Twilight Zone where there's this man, and he's kind of like a criminal, he's a bandit, and he gets killed, and then he meets with this angel, and basically this angel says he can have whatever he wants. He can have anything he wants. So he's like, I want some broads. I want to win all the games. Like, and he does. He gets all the broads, which are women. That's how he refers to women. And he wins all the gambling games. And he has a nice like penthouse. He has this wealthy place. And every day he just keeps winning and winning and winning. And then ultimately he's like, this is boring. He's like, can I go to the other place? And then the angel says to him, you are in the other place. And it's kind of really funny because this idea of heaven or paradise can really be hell too. You know, it could be this, and that sounds like a punishment. You made a very good argument. It's like, how could you really enjoy an everlasting paradise? You
Mm-hmm.
can't. And I think I think when people really invest in that, there's a reason why. They invest in it because they're suffering now. So this kind of hope and a dream for a better future where you're always going to be happy is there. And then I want to tell you about another Twilight Zone episode. I have a few stories too. In this Twilight Zone episode, it's about these people who are stuck on this planet. They're stuck on an alternative planet. This is like in the future from that period, so it would probably be now in our time. But they're stuck on a planet because there was like a world war or something, and they ended up on this planet. And they're like a colony, and it's so much heat, and there's meteorites that are coming, and they're suffering, and they don't have food. They have very limited. It's like living kind of like in a concentration camp. It's just a terrible space, right? But there's this leader there, and he was from Earth. So he knew what Earth looked like, and he's kind of like this father figure, and he's like, I'm going to guide, he's the guide to them, and he keeps them all sane and stable. But what happens is the humans they come back to bring the people back to the planet Earth, and then he loses all that power. So there was this idea that Earth would be this paradise that they can go back to, right? But then what's revealed is, for this guy, this was a paradise for him because he could be the prophet, he could be the leader, he had all the power. But once this reality actually came to be, he lost everything. So he starts to fight these other people. Like he has like a power battle with the humans, like the lieutenant and whatever. And it's really fascinating because they have this conflict, and the lieutenant, you could tell, is very sane. He's just like, dude, we got to get you back home. And all the people said, hey, I want to go be with my family. I haven't seen them in years and decades, and I want to be connected to my family. And this other guy's like, no, we will all live in our commune together. And they're like, no, we're not having it. And he starts to fall apart, and he ultimately gets stuck he chooses not to return with them, and the ship leaves to go back to Earth, and he's stuck on the planet in a cave, and he kind of goes mad. But it's kind of really intense because it's this idea of the grass is greener on the other side. There's this other paradise that that you want to get to. Yeah, Stephanie's right. There is one story where a girl goes into another dimension and they have to go find her, and it's really intense. The Twilight Zone is really awesome. There's a lot of really Rod Serling was, Sterling.
Yeah.
He was really quite good.
We had a super chat I missed before from It's Probing Time 666. The devil made me do it. Sent $6.66 Australian. I think that's it. If it's not, please don't crucify me. And he says, I'm completely lost with old mythology, but this is interesting anyway. Yeah. This story is quite interesting. I find it kind of funny. I don't know if my delivery is the best, but I think I'll get better at it. Anyway, but to my inside, I was kind of laughing the whole time. I know it's a bit inappropriate to laugh about some of the things I said today, but I am a little bit inappropriate. And let me just say that I do love everyone sending 666 today. I don't know why. They must know I'm a filthy atheist. All right, we're going to wrap up some housekeeping for today. Remember, we have on the description of the video the link to answer and help us complete 100 questions for the feud game. So if you have a moment, please click the link, help us fill that out. We're rapidly approaching 9,000 subscribers, which is absolutely amazing, and we owe it all to you. It has been a wild ride. It's been amazing, don't you think? Did you hear me?
Oh, me?
Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah,
I totally agree. Sorry, I was doing something.
Oh, thank you so much. Our very own Isa says, keep it up, Max. You're awesome. $2. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
and
so
don't give
agree.
me too much compliment because it will go to my head. Just tell me you suck.
No, I think you're doing a great job, and that was a great story, and it's a complex story, and I liked how you put the graphic up and you showed. Because see, that's the thing. I think when we tell the story next time, maybe we should put a little bit more like background, explain this is a story that has lots of genealogies, and we have to travel throughout time, and we see tragedy go through. Like I think that like setting that up would definitely help some folks who are like, dude, I'm lost. I have no idea because there's so much stuff here, and it is complex. Greek mythology is intense. And like
the
you said,
names, it's not like one's called John and the other one's Mark or Jose. It's like these are really hard names. It's hard to identify them.
Menelaus, Agamemnon, all of this stuff. I think we're probably going to tell a story about Troy.
I kind of messed up the timing of the presentation, but it happens live. I was kind of focused on more on telling the story than than moving the slides, but I'll get better, I promise you.
No, you're going to be good. It's the first story. It's the first time doing it. You did a great job.
Next week, we're going to have a catalog of weird deaths. There's some absolute craziness in there, and I had a lot of fun researching the topic. So yeah, we're going to do a catalog of weird deaths, and then I have a couple of shows planned ahead. I have Orpheus in mind, and a few other stories that have always caught my attention. I don't believe any of it, but I do, for some reason, love hearing these stories and getting to know more about what people thought in the past. Tao Software says, I'm a new subscriber. Welcome to the channel. Go through our backlog of videos. Everyone is welcome here. This show, we didn't open it to the panel. This is more of a show, but we regularly let our viewers join us and join in the conversation when we do after shows or when we are doing probably a few other shows that we have down the pipeline. I would like to thank everyone who came in, and I think I'm not missing anything. Oh, yes. After this video ends, the channel will forward to Mark Reed's channel, who's debating Kent Hovind. So
Good luck, Mark. Good luck, Mark. That's all I
if
can say.
if you have some free time, let's go over there, show our support for our beloved Mark, and we'll see you on the next show. Tell me that story, TMTS, and thank you for coming. Take care. Have a good night.